welcome to the Veterans Forum. I'm Bob Stevens, and I'm very proud and happy to be the host of these programs. We're coming to you from the studios here in Pittsfield, Pittsfield Community Television. Our job, with the help of the people who are volunteering to man the cameras and also our guests, is to try to fill in some of the blanks of the service activities of the guys and gals in any of the branches of the service, in any of the wars since World War I. We don't have many of those guys around anymore. This is an open forum, and we ask that anybody, male or female, who would like to share their experiences with us, please contact us. You've seen the address. You'll see me a lot. We'd be more than glad to talk with you, to help develop a program to your satisfaction, and then with your help, produce it. Today we have a real good program, I think, and I admit to a prejudice. George Sponauer is coming down from Vermont to share some of his experiences with us. George, we welcome you. And to set the record straight, would you pronounce your name, spell your last name, and give us your service dates and the branch?
Okay, it's George Anthony, middle name, and Sponauer is the last name. We say Sponauer or Sponauer, don't make much difference. It's spelled S-P-O-N-A-U-E-R. I was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Went to quite a few schools in that area. We had problems with my dad's job and stuff like that at the time. But I went in the service. I was working at Glen Martin's in Baltimore when I heard of the announcement that Pearl Harbor was bombed. I thought that that could be over real quick because I figured that the Air Force could just drop some bombs in the volcano there
Oh, yeah.
and blow Japan off the map. That's how stupid I was. But anyhow, we was building B-26s. I went there immediately out of high school. They was looking for work. They had a brand new factory that they built for this purpose. I think they knew they was going to have some trouble. I went down there and got a job at 17 years old.
Wow.
You couldn't work in Pennsylvania at 18 until you was 18.
Uh-huh.
So I immediately took the job, and I got into the new factory, and they brought two new men, or two of the original men was from the old factory. They was the nucleus of this group that I was in. And of course the factory started filling up with people, and I was in charge up to 20-some people, and I was 17.
You were illegally?
I don't know. I don't know.
But you did the work. That's
I did the
important.
work, and they followed my instructions and so forth. And what we was doing in that department was cadmium plating parts for the B-26, the motor mounts, the wheel struts, all of that stuff. The stuff would come over to us. We had to put, I forget what they even called it, but it was like a tar substance in the tubes and let it drain, plug the holes so that no moisture could get in afterwards. And then the whole section was plated. Mm-hmm. And then it was delivered to wherever they were going to use it. And of course, the B-26s had two motors, and of course, two sets of wheels, and we did wing struts also in that department. It went real good for a while. I got housing there that was recommended by the administration of the factory. They said that they was taking people over in a farm, and what it turned out to be was an old chicken coop.
Oh.
Yeah, a chicken coop. And 6 guys was in a 10-by-10 room. There was 2 beds, 2 single beds, and as it worked out, the other guys was on different shifts. So the people that was running the place would come in after the shift guys went and change the sheets, and the new crew come back in and they had their sleep and so forth. So it worked out. It was an excellent deal, though, financially, in that we got room and board for $10 a week, which is very hard to comprehend
you can't
now.
get that from here today.
And then they, the fellow that the farmer himself, he had a van, and he trucked a lot of these guys to the plant unless they had their own car. He'd take the one group in and wait for the other group to get out, and he'd bring them back, and that's the way it was handled. It was very well organized. And but we decided later that we wanted to have a little bit better quarters than that. So we, 5 of us, used to pal around together, and we found a house that could accommodate us all more privately, you know. And in this group of 5, me and another fellow was more close than the other 3. And he was from Omaha, Nebraska. So the factory was taking people from anywhere. They were just trying to fill the place up. And he and I buddied around. We seemed like we got along better than any other group. And he had a girl writing him. She had to be about 14 at the time, I guess. It was just a pen pal deal. And he was writing back, and he got me into the conversation sometime, and then she started writing me too. And for a long time, things went about equal, and then before too long, I started getting more mail than he did.
From the same gal?
From the same gal, yeah.
Good boy.
Yeah, and I don't know what difference there was, but maybe I was a little more interesting. But anyhow, this went on for 2 years. I was writing her for 2 years before I ever seen her. And she's my wife now.
Wow.
And we just celebrated our 64th wedding anniversary just last week. Unfortunately, she's in the Vermont Veterans Home with dementia. She's been there about 16 months. But we've had an excellent life up till that, you know. And even now, it's pleasant weather until, like I said, I can only stay there about 2 hours, and then it somehow gets to her. But we had worked out, when we both talked about enlisting, we talked about, well, how am I going to get to see Rosemary? And he says, well, when we both get accepted, we got some waiting time because the Army wasn't ready for all the people that were enlisted. He says, why don't you come out to my place? He says, and you can stay at my place, and you can go visit her.
This is out to Omaha?
Yeah, out to Omaha.
Oh, good deal.
So that was what our plan was, and that was how I was going to get to see Rosemary. Well, as it worked out, Rosemary's dad, who was a railroader, decided that it would be best for his family to be on a farm. So he moved from Omaha, Nebraska down to Calico Rock, Arkansas, bought a farm. Well, then I was in the stew. What was I going to do, you know? But as it worked out, our conversation still went on. I firmly believe that I learned more about her in writing than I would have been if I was dating. And
the power of the pen, huh?
Yeah, I really believe it. Well, anyhow, her mother invited me to come to the farm, which I did while I was waiting. We'd enlisted. It was unusual in that score, too, because he passed the mental test, and I knew as soon as I seen it, I was in trouble because 1/3 of it was word elimination stuff, which I did very good in the first part. The second part, I tried my best to break down the words with what little bit of Latin I knew, and I hated Latin in school, so I wasn't very good at it. And then I didn't have enough time to do the third part, so I failed. And I didn't think I should have failed, but I did.
This is while you were in the service and inducted?
I was working at Glen Martin's while we was
Okay.
both planning on enlisting. Well, then you could take this test again after a period of time. I think it was 60 days you could take it again. Well, in the meantime, my buddy failed the physical. And they would take him as a ground man in the Air Force, but he couldn't fly. And long term come my second examination, and I had planned on eliminating the part of the vocabulary. I did the first part and the last part, and I checked it all. And then whatever was left, I spent a little bit of time, and I passed with 2/3 of the test.
Good. All right.
So then we had, one of the conditions that I was only 17 at the time, and one of the conditions I had to get permission from the folks, and since I had been away from home, my home was in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and of course I was working in Baltimore. So they insisted that if I wanted them to sign, that I was going to come home for that waiting period.
Oh.
So, which I did. But during the time I was home, we cooked up a scheme to go out to see Rosemarie at the farm. And I was there for a week. I don't think I even kissed her, but she made an impression on me anyhow. And the next time I seen her, we got married. The very next day.
Wow.
The very next day. Of course, we continued to write while I was in training.
Okay.
And when we graduated, I got my wings, I got my bars, and I got my wife all within about an hour and a half.
Well, there's nothing like, saving time.
Yeah, right. So, of course, we come home to my folks. We had a 30-day leave after we graduated. And we were supposed to go to Atlantic City, and then go through all of the paperwork and everything like that you go through, making out your will and all that stuff. And along come a hurricane for Atlantic City Boardwalk. And we got waylaid there. We couldn't go there anymore. So they bunked us in with the group that was going into Miami. But no dependents. But I didn't want any part of that, so I says, come on down, and I'll find a place somewhere.
Your bride.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And she come down alone by train, which was unusual for her, too, you know. She come down by train, I met her at the station, and we rented a car, and we spent the last couple of days down there. Then we, after going through some more of this paperwork and stuff that's famous in the service, they assigned us to Savannah, Georgia, where the makeup of the crews were. I mean, like, all the navigators were sent there, and all the pilots were sent there, and all the bombardiers were sent there, and the gunners, and they put them together, you know.
Right.
And the pilot had authority to get rid of anybody he didn't think would fit in and so forth. And we moved to Savannah, and we operated there for a while. We got a brand new airplane assigned to us, and one of the problems we had to do was check it out, make sure that when the compass said you was going north, you was really going north by checking the ground cover and all that stuff. And of course that was my job. And then the pilot and co-pilot was flying together. The bombardier had some practice. The gunners had some practice and everything. And when we got ready, pretty much ready, we went up to Mitchell Field. that's right on in the boot of Long Island. And that was for overseas equipment. I don't know why they didn't do that some other way, but that's how they did it. We flew up to Mitchell Field. We got our equipment, and we had a couple of days there, only about 4 or 5. And while the wife was there, we milled around, and we went and had a photograph made, and this was it.
Uh-oh.
And it showed up in a window the next day with When Two Hearts Beat as One.
Ah.
The photographer liked it pretty well. And this picture went on all of my 50 combat missions right here.
Could you turn that around and see if the cameraman can get a shot
Well,
of that? Oh, that big one there.
The
Okay.
big one here.
It'll be easier.
Just here for our 64th anniversary, I had my art instructor, which I'm taking oil painting now again. I had him paint this picture. And he finished it 2 days before our 64th anniversary.
Wow.
And I took it in, and of course everybody in the process of seeing it thought he did an excellent job, and I did too.
Shaved a lot of years off you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
very good.
Anyhow, that was that. And it wasn't a couple of days after this that we was on our way overseas.
Okay.
Which happened to be January of 44, because I graduated in 43,
Now,
October 43.
Excuse me, could you back up a bit? You went from working at in Maryland, I believe, or Baltimore,
Yeah.
into your activity in the service. But I'd like to find out, if you can, where did you start? Where did you enlist in? Your basic training, boot training, and what kind of flight training did you take?
Right. Okay.
So we have some chronological.
We was assigned first to. We all went into a place for classification.
Okay.
That's when they quizzed you about whether you wanted to be a navigator and whether you had the controls for it, the mentality for it, and all of that stuff. They had tests for that. They had tests for the ones that was going to be pilots. If you wanted to be a pilot and you didn't qualify it, you could go to a navigator or a bombardier. You know, so that was where they sorted you out, so to speak, and that was in Nashville, Tennessee.
All
That's
right,
where I was
good.
trying to think about. Yeah, and we also had some basic training there. That's where you went through all the marching, and that's where you started getting uniforms and all of that stuff.
Any of that history that when you quote, first went in, as far as I'll call it boot camp?
Yeah.
Any memories of that? Like, what did you have? Any problems getting used to quote being in with all these other guys, being all by yourself, and so on?
Well, I didn't have too much problems with it. Other people did, I guess, but I seemed to be able to get along with most everybody, and it worked out pretty good for me. I didn't have too much trouble at all. The biggest trouble we had, of course, was getting used to the food, you know, and of course, most of it is unseasoned, and you know, it's not cooked season, so there's a difference regardless. They fed us good. There was no problem from that standpoint, and then. We had a lot of calisthenics. They was trying to put everybody in shape. So that was all part of the routine. But it didn't last very long. They had shifted us out of there as soon as they went through a few basic things. We didn't have the problems like the staff sergeants calling you down and all that stuff from before. We didn't have all of that rigmarole. It was they just had a problem of sorting you out as to where you're going to go, and that's where you start. When you got there, that's when you started having a little bit more problems.
Now, did you sign in as an air cadet, or how did you get into the Air Force, or the Army Air Force, I should
yeah,
say.
when when we took the test and passed, that put you in as an aviation cadet.
Okay.
That was what you would be when they called you for active duty. You started as an aviation cadet, and by the time they got a place ready for us, I got called on my 19th birthday. That was my first day of active duty, February 27th, 42,
43?
must have been 42.
Okay.
Yeah, 42. And then in all of the shifting around and flying together and going through, well, of course I had to go to navigation school. That was a full 9 months. I graduated in 43.
Where was that?
That was in Selman Field, and that's in Louisiana.
Okay.
Yeah, upper part of Louisiana. And we went through a lot. Of course, everybody was alphabetical. I think the class must have been about 500 people. And you actually set alphabetically pretty much. Like the two guys, one was Stivers and Straney and and Sponauer and so forth. So they start separating you. Even for flying training, you had flying navigation as well as classroom stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You went up and actually control the plane, where you wanted to go, how to get there, and so forth. And you learned all of this about how the wind affects you, how the altitude affects you, how the temperatures affect you, how much wind would change your speed over the ground, and depending on whether it was head-on or sideways or, all of that stuff. You learned how to do all of that. And you also learned how to read the terrain from up above. Because normally when you're in a bomber, you're flying at 25,000 feet.
Okay. Now this is before the Northern Bomb Sight came into being, wasn't it?
Well,
or did you had to train on that?
I didn't have any training on it at all, but when we got our bomber, it already had a northern, and of course the bombardier had been trained on it. So that was where all of the training come together, So we had one incident when we was training as a group, as a crew. We was up in the up on a flight, and they was towing targets for the guys to shoot at, from anyone of the turrets and so forth. And the pilot accidentally hit the bailout bell in his and the bombardier got panicky, and he almost crawled over me, and he said, "What the hell's going on?" He called before. He looked out and didn't see any problems, and we didn't seem to be going down, but we had just leveled off, and the altimeter's lags. So he thought we was going down, and I didn't even have my chute fastened on around my legs yet, and because we used to wear a harness only and had a barrel snap-on pack, and you had to crawl up alongside of the tire to get up in the upper area, and these chutes was left up there because it didn't pay you to take off and have a chute with you, because if you was going down early, a chute's not going to do you any good anyhow. Yeah.
Well, just for kicks, what kind of aircraft were you flying? You never told me.
Well, in B-24s was our combat plane. Our training was in AT-7s or something like that, I think it was. It was a small 2-engine it was like a 5-passenger plane, but they converted it with some navigating equipment and so
Okay,
forth from that standpoint, yeah.
Good.
When we got to Savannah, Georgia, we picked up a B-24, and there was one assigned to us. And
That was your baby?
That was our baby, yeah. When we was up in New York, they had a crew paint on the side of it. One of the co-pilot's family was connected with Broadway somehow, and at the time they had a play going on, which I think the family was involved in somewhat. It was named Jackpot, and that was the name they put on our plane. I hadn't been with them at the time, so I didn't get involved in the deciding of it, but they used Bugs Bunny for Jackpot, and the pot was actually a urinal that he sat on, and that was on our plane, painted on both sides. And then each one of the crew members had their wife's or girlfriend's name on their station. So, unfortunately, after all the training and even going overseas, we flew overseas, going through South America and all the way around and going across that great big water there and landing in Tunis and
in North Africa.
In North Africa. We was there while they was completing our base. They was frantically building bases in southern Italy to get enough bombers in there so that they could do the job that they wanted to. And when we was in Tunis, there was a group that got shot up real bad in Italy, and they called for some planes, and they called for us to give some planes. Our Jackpot was turned over to them because it was one of the older models. It didn't have the new turret on the front. And they was coming, and I understand that they was building B-24 every 63 minutes in the end, in the ends of production when they was really going. One every 63 minutes is what the production was. So they was coming pretty fast. I think women was even flying them overseas, you know, without what you call it. So we got a replacement pretty quick, but then we had to go through the whole rigmarole of checking it out again.
All recheck,
yeah. And our plane wound up with this group, and they had been getting beat up quite a bit with the enemy. And as I understand it, one of the planes got shot up pretty bad. The pilot indicated he was giving up, and the fighters started escorting him down.
The German fighters?
German fighters,
okay.
Yeah.
There's
because
a difference.
Apparently they was the ones that, we didn't even have fighter protection at that time, And one of the crews shot one of the Germans down while they was giving up. And that didn't go over very good.
That's a no-no.
And no matter what they did, they changed insignias and everything else. The Germans knew that group whenever they was, and boy, they really picked on them, and they knocked the living out of them. I mean, really.
Now, were you based in Tunis, or you're over in Italy now?
No, we were still in Tunis.
Flying up.
So we had to take our plane and drop it off up there, and then we got a new one right away.
Okay. All right.
When our turn come to, when the base was finally ready for us, we flew as a group up to the base, and this was in the middle of, right below Foggia, about 30 miles south of Foggia, Italy, where a lot of B-17s had been based.
Okay.
And B-24s was based all over the southern part of Italy, further south. Well, it took us, we wasn't operational until, I think our first missions was in early April.
43, 44?
44.
Okay.
And I didn't get to go on the very first group mission. They have about 40 planes, and they take 35 of them generally. And the crews keep shifting. Sometimes you don't even use your own plane.
Oh.
Yeah. Your own plane goes out almost every time because they try to have 35, 36 in the air all the time, you know. Well, your crew only flies 2 out of 3 days. If you fly, let's say if the bombing group goes out every 3 days, 3 times, 1, 2, 3 days in a row, if the weather's right, stuff like that, then the planes are flying all the time, but the crews aren't flying at the same time. Okay. You're flying 2 out of 3 missions. It gives you a day off, but the planes are flying.
Okay, just using the assets.
Yeah, that's the way it works out. So anyhow, the very first mission, the fellow that sat alongside of me as a navigator trainee, he was my best friend, and he even stood up for us when we got married.
Wow, good deal.
He got shot down the very first day and lost his life, the whole crew. Whole crew. That was the first casualty in the Air Force, and it was my best buddy that was there. And we went to the same general area the next day, but we didn't have any casualties at that time. But anyhow, that's the way it was. We flew 50 combat missions. We had no fighter escort originally. Then later on, we started getting some. We had P-47s first, I believe it was. Then we had Lightnings, P-38s, and then we had P-51s, which it was hard for us to visualize 51 because they looked so close to the ME-109.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, it was a big problem. As a matter of fact, the Air Force group sent P-51s buzzing our base and so forth, so everybody could get a good look.
Real good look.
Close.
That's one of our boys.
Yeah, that's one of our boys. Yeah. But anyhow, the Germans had air control when we was there. We didn't have many bombers to begin with. We might start out with maybe 200 bombers going in a general area to begin with. In that time that I was there, we had a lot of 1,000 bomber raids in the end. So that's how much it changed. And of course, as we kept after their oil, their aircraft factories, their transportation, a lot of their munition factories and stuff like that. So in that short period of time, it was an excellent change in a what you call it. I always thought I wouldn't want to be doing it again, but I thought I was in the best part of the air war because it started where they had the upper hand, and in 6 months' time, it changed.
Okay, that's the good part.
Yeah, that was a good part.
The first 6 months were
it was hello. I mean, we come back 11 times shot up out of the 50 missions by ourselves. And that was usually the worst time for anybody to be by themselves because you was broke down somehow. You might have had injured on board. You might have not, you've been slower than what you was. You was all by yourself. You wasn't in a group with the rest of the protection.
Just a sitting duck.
You was a sitting duck, and that's where the Germans would pick on, you know, because it was safer for them to pick on a single guy, you know, than it was to attack a group. And our group was exceptionally tight. I mean, we got awards for it pretty much. Everybody admired. And we always flew in the highest part. If you know anything about what group, the lead plane would be right here. There would be a plane on top of them and back, and one over here lower. And right behind this plane, at lower level, was another plane, and then this guy was higher but lower than this guy.
Just
It was
staggered.
just staggered. And we was almost, the squadron commander loved my pilot because he'd take out that plane. He was a little shorty. And he must have only weighed about 125 pounds. He even used cushions under his seat to be able to reach the pedal. Yeah, and he would take that damn wing and he would tap the other buddy over there. Okay. He would tap the wing. You could feel it tapping, you know, and it scared the devil out of you. But he had the control.
He knew what
and
he was
the guy loved it. You know, the guy that he was tapping loved it. Here you're right in there. You got all these 10 guns right there alongside of my 10 guns, you know, and so forth. So,
of all the 50 missions, are any one, two, maybe three that real outstanding, or that you really had, if you will,
yeah,
your comeuppance?
We had 3. We crashed 3 times when we got back.
Oh,
we were so bad off that we crashed 3 times. One time we was heading towards Munich. We was going up alongside of it. Normally, in the beginning, they would head into the target right from where we was. You know, they'd go maybe zigzag course a little bit, but they'd pick the big town so the navigator knew where he was at and all that stuff. And then you had what they call an IP. That's where you gathered together, and then the bombardier took over because the plane had to be under the bomb site control.
Yeah.
Well, when that happened, everybody dropped gently on the lead plane. The lead bombardier was doing a sighting. The second group had a bombardier that he could have his sighting too, with 18 planes, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And but they was all different heights. And later on, they decided that they found out that it took over 100 miles to turn this whole group around.
Wow. That's
Believe
a lot
it or
of
not,
sky.
yeah, because see, the
They had
main
to keep in
plane
formation,
could only
yeah.
go a little bit.
Okay.
The group had to go with it. And finally, they decided, well, gee, it would be smarter to go beyond the target and hit it on the way back.
Yeah.
Because anybody that was damaged, they had another 100 miles to go. And that was when they usually got clobbered, because it would be over the big towns. Well, one of our worst missions, we was going and attack Munich. We was on the side of it, going on up above and coming around back. And we was tight formation. They were supposed to, intelligence said there was 465 fighter planes defending Munich. And any one of them could go after you, of course. We got hit with an anti-aircraft fire. It took our second prop right off.
Bingo.
Bingo. And of course, that drew our plane this way. And since we was the highest plane, we went through the whole group. And we had no control, you know. By the time they was pulled, the 2 engines on this side was full power. You only had one on this side, full power.
You're spiraling right out.
And we were spiraling, and we was going through the whole damn group, and that's the way the group was tipped. You know, if we was in the highest spot, in the highest box, we went through that whole group.
Did you have any kind of a radio silence that could break
Oh, it's
silence?
always radio silence. No,
Okay,
no
to
radio.
warn the people that, hey, we got
No.
a dead duck coming down?
No, everybody had to keep their eyes open, that's all.
That's scary.
Well, it's scary, and of course, on top of that, all these Germans are waiting for somebody like that, you know. So my pilot says, Spoonie, he says, give me a heading home. And he told the bombardier, salvo the bombs.
Okay.
We still had all the bombs. He says, you mean on all those people? You know, all those poor people? He says, salvage the goddamn bombs. So he salvaged them, and they went right through the bomb bay door, and that made it worse for us because you had a big hole in the bottom of your plane. The doors was just flapping like this, you know. So anyhow, we had from Munich all the way back to the lower part of Italy to fly with by ourselves. And the pilot started heading for some clouds that was around the Alps. Of course, we had to go over the Alps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as soon as I gave him the heading, it was the first general heading I gave him, I start rechecking myself, you know. And I was looking at all the instruments, and when I read the altimeter, there's one small needle that represents 10,000, and then a bigger needle that represents the individual thousands. And I misread 10,000 feet.
Ooh. High or low?
Low.
Oh. Treetop.
I thought we was at 17,000 feet when he pulled out of it. We spiraled down, which is almost an impossibility to get out of a spiral with a bomber. But the pilot and co-pilot, they put the full force on the rudders and stuff, and one engine missing, of course. That pulled
more
us
drag
up.
too.
Yeah. So they did manage, but I thought it was at 17,000 feet, and actually, when I checked the third time, it was at 7,000 feet. We had gone down from our altitude, which was pretty close to bombing range, probably 22,000. We had gone down all the way down to 7,000 feet, out of control.
Just a dead leaf spiral. Huh?
Yeah, and through the whole group, which scared the hell out of everybody, you know.
It
naturally.
should.
Yeah, yeah,
It should.
yeah. Well, he started aiming for some clouds because of the fighter escort, and because of or not the fighter escort, but the fighters there, and he started climb on 3 engines to get to the clouds, and of course we was on the other side of the Alps, and they're 17,000 feet. The 2 highest peaks of the Alps is over 17,000 feet. Well, they was even in cloud cover. So he was heading for the clouds, and as it happened, the tail gunner, which is still living, he's the only other one that's living out of our crew.
The whole crew?
Yeah, yeah. He made a call on a phone. He said, "Jesus Christ," he says, I had to suck up my piles because because we're so close to the valley. And here, as it worked out, we was flying between the 2 biggest peaks. We hadn't reached our altitude to get over them.
So you had to go through the valley.
We went through the valley in the clouds. Now, I don't know how the hell it ever happened, but that's how it happened.
You're here.
Yeah, we're here. And how lucky can a navigator get, you know?
Oh, was that when you had crash landing, or?
When we got down to the base, when we got home to the base, that was one of our crash landings, yes. We had, he gave us instruction. Of course, they waited till we got last. Any crash landings was always last,
oh, yeah.
And you're in a worse situation, you know. And we had to land on dirt, not on a runway, because we had a steel runway. And of course, if you crashed on that, you would destroy it, pretty much.
The mats and the landings, yeah.
Steel
we put
mat.
quite a few of them down.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So we went along. The pilot says, "I want everybody that's not necessarily up here in the back of the plane, right behind the bomb bay." And he says, "When I hit the tail, I'm going to have to land on my 2 front wheels and drag the tail." And he said, "When I hit the ground," he says, "everybody run back further to hold on the back down." So we did, but what nobody even paid attention to was that you got that hole for the Bombay, or for that ball gunner. And of course, we was able to retrench that, but you got that hole, and when that's hitting the ground, you're scraping. Yeah. And all the dirt's coming up just like a plow. It almost buried us in the back.
Wow.
Yeah. And you hit it about 90 miles an hour.
Were there any guys wounded in that, or did you?
Nobody was wounded. We lost the plane. The plane was a total washout, and there wasn't an injury. Honest to God.
Lucky.
Not an injury.
Yeah.
We had another crash from another incident. We was going up over the Italy, going up over the land instead of going out over the water. And the Germans had moved in a line up above Anzio. And the very first indication we had of it, some shells come up, blew out our nose tire, and one shell come up and took the nose gunner right off the other plane.
Ooh.
It just disappeared. The whole turret and everything. He was gone, everything. And of course, we went back. We had to fly back that way. We knew we was going to have to crash land again. We knew we was going to have to go by the tail. And so we went through. We had some experience, so we did the same thing. But we went a little further this time, and we was dragging, and before we got stopped, we hit an old ravine that the contractor just put softened dirt in, level it out. Mm-hmm. But when our wheels hit that, our main wheels hit that, we was skidding on the tail. The main wheels sunk in this soft dirt, and we flipped. We flipped. And again, nobody got hurt.
Oh, lucky.
Yeah. And we had a third crash landing, and at the end, we flipped. We washed out 3 airplanes in the 50 missions.
Oh. I'd like to change gears for a second, if I can, because obviously people can see you've got all kinds of stuff and goodies.
Yeah.
Would you want to walk through some of them? Just give them an idea. Again, your 50 mission crush.
Yeah.
Some of the stories about the 24s, what's your crew. Now, for example, when everything was all over and done with and you guys came home, have you had any reunions, or have they slowly taken the backseat?
We had no contact with one another, because actually the crews went home individually, not as a crew.
Oh.
Because when you got 50 missions, and some of the fellows had to fly extra missions because of sickness or injury of another crew, or somebody got delayed and was later, you had a spread there of about at least 2-3 weeks from when the first guy got his 50 missions and the rest of them got,
Yeah.
So, and as it worked out, you didn't fly as a crew. They kept the airplane there to keep things going. And so you went home by boat. And that kind of ticked me off. I mean, they flew our butt over.
A luxury liner, huh?
No.
No.
A regular troop ship.
But when you got home, what kind of a greeting did you have? Do any kind of great big hello, welcome back, and so forth? Any big parades, or?
No, we had nothing like that, because of course we got home as an individual.
Okay.
So there was nothing like that. You got home, you hugged your wife, you got to see your folks, and we gradually went around. In the next couple of weeks, that's all you did was visit relatives and so forth, But we didn't have any animosity against it. Most everybody was real appreciative of the World War heroes. I think so. I didn't have any problem that way.
Good.
I didn't even have any mental problem from all this stuff. I'm really surprised. I can't. Of course, I was only over there I left the States in January and I was back in September.
Wow. Oh.
And of course, we didn't fly combat in the beginning, and some of it was getting ready to come home.
Okay.
We had 2 weeks of leave while I was over there. When you hit 25 missions, they send you over to the Isle of Capri for a 2-week vacation.
R&R.
Yeah, R&R, yeah. And it was good R&R, real good R&R. But boy, the 26th mission was hell. I mean, you knew what
back in the group.
Yeah. Oh boy, that I almost I almost caved in
Yeah, I
then.
know. Well, when you got home, did you go in schooling in GI Bill, anything like that, or did you?
Well, yeah. After I got home, we had some sort of a recoup time, and then they assigned us. Your service wasn't over then because this was just 1944. So they reassigned it after they checked you out, and you know, you got upgraded shot wise and all of that stuff, and then they reassigned me to Westover Field in Springfield.
Wow.
Yeah.
As an instructor, or?
Yeah, as an instructor, and so you was beginning, and yet at the same time there was a shortage of navigators, and they was beginning to train us at the same time in our off hours to navigate in the A-26 attack bomber. And that was as different as night and day from being up at 5 miles up, you know, and so forth. And these A-26s was,
Yeah.
I had trouble with that. I really did. But they put out they knew that the European war was getting over pretty quick, and we was being trained as well as I was instructing. We both things was happening at the same time. We was being trained for 26s to go overseas, and they did ask if one time we had a meeting, and the colonel was up there, and he says, "We want to take a survey. If you had a chance to get out of the service now, would you take it?" Well, of course, everybody thought they would right away, but it required a lot of thought because there was no jobs, because as soon as the war was cranking down, every one of the factories was closing down and have to get reproduction and so forth. So there was not much work and so forth like that. So it was a question. But I decided I was an officer, but I was dissatisfied with their control of the GI. Okay. I mean,
when you get out, you got the silver bar, didn't you? First, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But at Westover, one of the things that I disliked a lot was that they made two officers on duty, and he had to get 10 post violations before he was off duty. Oh. And the next day, 2 more goes. So as it was going, as people was getting a little bit more alert to this, it was getting harder and harder, and I just didn't like the baloney. I didn't like that at all. This was from against your own men.
Yeah, I know. Let me. I got to stop here because we're getting assigned the men, since it's about time to wrap.
Yeah.
I'd like you to show that little collection, if you will. I'll hold it.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can do the finger point. I'm good at holding things.
Okay. Good.
You got a good shot of that, Jeff?
Well, this one right here, it's all right?
They're all set.
Okay. This one right here is a Distinguished Flying Cross. We got that for some of our missions. This was the best medal of them all. This was a routine medal here. They called it the Air Medal. You got it every time you got a 5-mission
box or something.
Box, yeah. Okay. So what they did after issuing the first mission, the first medal, they started giving you little clusters for every 5 missions. Then
how many clusters do you have on that little jewel?
Well, I only have 3 on there, but I'm entitled to 1 every 5 missions. So that should be 10 except for the one that the medal itself. So you should have had 9. It ain't room on there for 9. We did get the Presidential Citation. Let's see, that's this one here. Presidential Citation for excellence in one of the bombing raids.
Good.
Yeah. And these missions here, or these medals here, are different area medals. One's Africa, one's Italy, one's Northern Italy. Because we was involved, I was over there when they started attacking the North Shore, D-Day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, I was there then, and we come up from the south to divert the Germans. They had to defend both the North Shore and the South Shore as well. So that was the psychology about that. And so the medals actually didn't mean an awful lot to me. I liked the Distinguished Flying Cross. The medals did help you get out, though.
Yeah, 5 points, 10
Yeah,
points. Oh,
when they asked if you would take a discharge if you got it, I put yes. I'd take a discharge.
Just don't get in the way when I
Yeah,
go out the
right.
door.
They while I was in training for this this smaller bomber, knock come at the door, and the guy come in and says so and so, and Lieutenant George Sponauer, report to the colonel for discharge.
And you did.
And I did.
Good
And,
enough.
One thing about the whole thing, I had figured I was going to have enough money coming for the end that I would need a guard going home to private the distance.
Oh.
And Christ, as it worked out, I had to borrow money to get home, because the $300 discharge was given at $100 each of the first month.
We're going to have to call it quits. I
Yeah,
hate
okay.
to cut you off, but
Good, that's all right.
the man's giving us the hand.
Yeah.
The man says, press the fresh, buddy.
Yeah,
Good
thank
to
you.
see you alive
Yeah.
and well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think it's time that some of this got out.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, that's another one. Again, we hope that it's something that you people will like to see and partake in. Bob Stevens saying thank you, and come back and see us. We're here to help you. Goodbye.